Welcome, everyone. This is the School District of Prescott Board of Education regular meeting. We have been in executive session since 5 p.m. We are now on item 5, Pledge of Allegiance. Tanya, would you care to lead us?
Sure will. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
We'll move on to item 6, recognition of visitors. Anybody in the audience that would care to be recognized, just please step forward and state your name and municipality. All right, we'll move on. Item 7, good news.
All right. So student council, currently I think the biggest thing we're working on is putting together a t-shirt protest for race-based logos like we have in past years. And so like the school board and Dr. Spicuzza will be receiving a letter about that probably pretty soon. And we're hoping to do that next month. And we're also planning a Snowfest for next month. We're planning a winter formal and a lot of other fun activities.
Thank you.
Thanks,
Ryan.
I'll have the administrative team come up to the podium. We have a special guest, additional students, Mr. Kozmowski.
Yeah, so I just want to I'll turn it back over to Ryan, but there's a partnership between the intermediate school and the high school and our inclusivity club. And they came down, they had to design lessons, which then along with Larissa Dreyer, counselor, they reviewed them together. The kids came into our 4 different classes and presented on that, and I'll let them tell you a little bit more about that. But it's a really cool project to do together, and our kids got a lot out of it, and I think the high schoolers got just as much. So ladies, why don't you step up, say your name, and then sort of how it went.
Okay, hi, I'm Ella Johnson.
My name's Lily Canfield-Huth.
So basically we started out this project with a group called Invent to Prevent, where you basically make something to help prevent violence. And so we wanted to go down to 5th graders and teach them how to build up confidence, how to build a support system, and some coping mechanisms to deal with their feelings.
All right, and then our lessons and activities, what she just said, coping with their emotions, learning how to deal with anger in a healthy way, and especially when a lot of them are transitioning to middle school next year, we wanted to give them the opportunity that we wish we had. And so we presented some slides to them and had some activities to go along with them. Just about how to cope with your feelings and how to be productive with them instead of taking them out in unhealthy ways.
Yeah. So we think that it went really well after we finished the project. It was 3 separate times where we went down there. And so we thought it went so well that we wanted to bring it to the St. Joe's kids as well. So we are planning to go down there for 3 weeks and teach them the same things that we taught the 5th graders at the intermediate school. And we also got an honorable mention with Invent to Prevent, and we were the only high school in Wisconsin to accomplish that, so that's pretty cool.
Good job.
Thank you both.
Thank you.
Good evening, members of the board. Kyle Lego, the middle school principal. We have been extremely busy over the past month at Prescott Middle School. We're just finishing up our winter screening, our checkpoint for all of our students to see where they're at, both mathematically and in their reading and language arts areas. So that academically, that's what we're just finishing up in this past week. Some of your kiddos may still be coming home. We're trying to grab that. I think we have 10 left to screen. But we screen all of our middle school kids to get our kind of a mid-year check-in. Social emotionally, we are and the high school has also started a pilot with a program called Empower You. We use a second step curriculum for all of our tier 1 social emotional supports for kids. Our teachers teach a lesson every Tuesday and Wednesday. And now we're starting our Tier 2 social emotional units using a program called Empower You. We're piloting it with 10 different seats right now. So we're pretty excited to be able to take our social emotional curriculum to the next step. Finally, on this upcoming Friday, we are going to be heading to the Falcon Center in River Falls, the UWRF Falcon Center, for our second quarter acknowledgement party to acknowledge all of the great work and the good deeds that our students did during our quarter number 2. And we have a tremendous, I think we have about 97% of our students that are going to be attending. They did a great job with reading and meeting their AR goals, along with we now are setting some goals in both math and science. So we're starting to set more academic goals for our students to be meeting. We're starting off small in some of those areas, and we'll continue to build in the math and science areas. So thank you.
Awesome. Members of the board, community members, Sandy Strand, Director of Student Services. I just want to piggyback on the Empower You piece that Mr. Igo mentioned. What's really cool about this program is it is more of an individually based program, which makes it then that kind of Tier 2 or Tier 3 intervention for our students. And each student through the course of the program is assigned a personal coach or mentor that then can work with them on their own personal goal setting and monitoring as they go along. We're super excited about the program. We have 20 seats at the high school and 10 at the middle school, and we're hoping using title dollars that we'll be able to continue the program moving into the future for social emotional learning in our multi-leveled systems of support. Also, just really super excited to announce that all of our special ed teacher positions are full. So we're very happy about that. But we were very surprised to be sitting with 2 ID teacher positions in the middle of the year, and we had several fantastic candidates, but we hired 2 fantastic people. So thanks.
Thank you.
Michael Smolsky Intermediate School. 2 big things I wanted to celebrate today. We had our spelling bee, and our third place finisher for the intermediate was Owen Johnson. Second place was Owen Gordon, and then our first place was Maeve Hasselquist, a 5th grader, and she'll be representing us at the regional spelling bee in February at Turtle Lake. We also have participated in the last several years the Conservation Awareness Speaking Contest, and this is held throughout the state of Wisconsin. This year we had a number of students that participated in the event, and it actually was hosted at our school. And our finalists were Rainer Haig, Wesley Drew, Aubrey Shanley, Kenzie Ward, and our winner was Maeve Hasselquist again. So she'll be representing us at the state level now competition that's coming up in March. The other part that I wanted to share of good news is has to do with teaching and learning, and it's the high school. Every year we look at courses to sunset and courses that we want to bring back on, and this is a collaborative process between the PLC's leadership, but then also the PLCs themselves and courses that they're going to offer. I'd like to announce that we have 8 new courses that are going to be offered next year. 6 of them, though, are from the English department, so they've taken on the heavy lifting this year. Courses such as children's books, sports and adventure, current events, mythology, some of those things. We also have a new AP course coming on board, so that will put us at 10 AP courses, along with our 22 transcripted courses and our 5 dual enrollment courses. Last year, there were 693 students enrolled in those courses, which came out to over 1,900 credits earned by our students here. We have an open house coming up on February 7th for all of the high school, and we really heavily recommend that freshman parents are there so they can hear about the 4-year plan. Thank you.
Thank you, Michael. Sarah?
Hi, Sarah Dusick, Malone Elementary. We are also, like the middle school, finishing up our winter screening, and that's just a good thermometer check for where we are mid-year, but then also teachers use that data during our collaboration times on Mondays to really dive into the data and help with intervention and enrichment planning to help do some more individualized work for our students. A big shout out to Madison Guerin and Michelle Tromberg, who have been feverishly working to get our 4K and kindergarten registrations out. 4K registration has already hit the mail, and they'll be able to hand in packets at the Malone Elementary from 4 to 6 on February 9th, with a deadline to get paperwork handed in by February 17th. Kindergarten registration will be sent home with 4K students soon, and be put in the mail for students who we know aren't a part of our 4K programming. Also, Susie Linder and myself have been working to get our summer school staff courses and staff identified so that we can start planning, in the hopes that we'll get summer school registration up and running before spring break. That's it for now. We have more good news to share later in the board meeting with Afton Apple.
Thank you.
Andrew Caudill, Activities Director. First, want to congratulate girls basketball on a great win last night, opening up a really good lead in the Middle Border Conference, and also they cracked the top 10 in the state this week, being ranked number 10 in Division III. Boys basketball is on a nice little winning streak, and they're also ranked number 10, and there'll be fun between us and Osceola down the stretch. This Saturday, our speech program will open up their competition schedule at their home tournament, which will be here at Prescott High School. Dance will be at regional Saturday at DC Everest in the Wausau area. I'd like to recognize and congratulate Benny Olson, who's ranked number 5 in the state in Division II at 106 pounds. And a little fun fact, that Prescott is currently one of 6 schools in Wisconsin to have both basketball programs state ranked and at least one wrestler state ranked. And then finally, I just want to do a shout out to Brittany Camrath and our singers. Here in Prescott, we take a lot of pride that when we host athletic events, we have live singers sing the national anthem. And we have yet to have to play the recording since I've been here. We always have a singer ready to rock and roll, and so Ryan is one of those singers, and so we are really grateful for them. So thank you.
Thank you, Andrew. I, as a superintendent, have 3 quick hits. I would like Nicole, our food and service, who is in the back, if she would just stand. Nicole Lenzer. Across time, we've been able to access some grants, but recently we're just awarded another $5,000 grant in the food service department, which is to buy local products from farms and local agencies versus kind of the national corporations. And I know that she's been working and making those connections within the community, and we're also going to be submitting another grant that would be at a larger dollar amount. So Nicole, for all the additional work that you're doing first year, really appreciate it and tip our hat to you. Also just wanted to recognize Mr. Figge, Josh Figge, and our community. The Chamber of Commerce identified businesses and individuals, and then the Educator of the Year. Mr. Figge was identified as Educator of the Year. He is not here in present tonight, otherwise I'd have him stand. But if you do see him, just acknowledge that as well. Then up on the recent news is that a lot of you talk about or want to know about how we're financed. If we're financed well, we're able to do the wonderful activities and opportunities that you heard from our younger students participating with MIS, but also the new programs that'll be up at the high school. Since September, which is the first initial count that's in the 3rd column, we were at 1,309 students. The most recent 2nd January count, we are now at 1,331 students. It is an increase of about 2%. It's 22 more students, which just means that we'll have additional revenue that will be average, not for the whole year, but we will receive a little bit additional revenue heading into the end of the year. And obviously that will be part of our levy cap for next year. So at least trending in a better direction than we've been, and just wanted to make sure that that good news was shared with the community and also with the board.
All right, thanks, Rick. We'll move on to school business. First item is the consent agenda. In consent, we have the regular board minutes from the December 21st, 2022 meeting, board checks and finance, non-licensed personnel, retirement, resignation, employment, and change of non-licensed staff, facility use contract, and insurance provisions for external group hosting wrestling tournament using district facilities, and then board policy updates from Neola. And I think we had talked in closed about pulling out number 4.
Yes.
So we can pull that out now, and then we'll discuss it on the next item. would somebody like to make that motion though? To pull out the,
I move to pull out number 4, facility use contract and insurance provisions for external groups hosting wrestling tournament using district facilities, to pull that out of the consent agenda.
and I don't know if we need to have a vote on that, do we?
To be safe, I would.
Okay, all right. Second, anyone?
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? That carries, so that pulls out number 4. If there are no other changes to the consent agenda, I'll adopt the consent agenda with number 4 pulled out. Are there any objections? No objections, consent agenda is adopted. So let's move on to what will now be item A1.
We'll make, just to keep rolling, I'll move it to D, if you're okay with that. Because we do have some guests that wanted for B and C.
Okay, yeah, let's do that. So it'll be moved down to item D then, below B and C. So between C and D, we're moving it to?
Yes.
Okay. All right, so let's move then to item B, consider retirement, resignation, and new hires of licensed staff.
Yes.
First one is retirement.
Yeah, so the first one is retirement. Obviously, Ms. McNary is in the second row and has been a stellar employee, and also just somebody that has been a true treat to work with here at the Prescott High School and has touched many lives. The letter of retirement was submitted to the board, and only an ELA teacher could write that eloquently. She is the only retirement that is put before the board tonight.
Any comments from the board here?
Well, I'll go first. Thank you for all that you've done. I had you. I don't know if it was your favorite, but the school paper was one of my favorite classes. I still talk about it today. I think you've had all of my kids and my wife, so we thank you for all that you've done, and wish you the best in retirement. Thank you.
I will add, but you also made a comment, which was like the letter was so well written that you knew that you're just an amazing teacher and the writing was great. But what I was really impressed with was just how long of service you've had in our school district, and all the different things that you've brought to our school district outside of just the classroom duties, which is immense in itself, but to be really immersed within our community. So I think you have my daughter, so you didn't have me, but like you touched deep in our family as well, and our community is really thankful for you.
You sure you want to retire? Yeah, thank you for your service and all you do for the kids. I have not had to be in contact directly with you because that's what my wife does in our family, and I appreciate that too. But no, thank you for everything you've done.
Vicky, you wanna?
Yeah.
Amazing time of service, and I'm guessing that you probably know her much better.
Yeah, I mean, I really go to show how long you've been teaching, I think, because I also had you. Thank you for everything you did last year for me and for what you've done for everyone for however long you've been teaching. I really don't know. Yeah, thank you for making all my classes enjoyable last year.
Oh, Miss McNary. I want to call him Miss Dolan. And it was 92. He was 94, right, Pat?
Yeah.
So, yes, and I had Miss McNary as a teacher, too, and back then it was Miss Dolan. So, you probably made me into the writer I am today, which I don't know is a good thing or a bad thing for you, but thank you again, yeah, for all your service. How many years?
31?
31? 37 years with the same district. That's amazing, first of all. So I appreciate you sticking around for that long. Yes, thank you. And enjoy your retirement, and I'm sure you'll be on the sub list. So. Would anybody care to make a motion here?
Yeah, I'll move to approve the retirement of Bonnie McNary.
I will second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? That one carries. Item 2 is no resignations. There's none. Thank you, Ms. McNary. And we'll move to item 3, new hires.
The new hires is a cross-categorical ID teacher, Ms. Strand,
Because the name is spelled the same as a local vendor, the pronunciation, however, of Amy's last name is?
It is Potasic.
Potasic. So Amy Potasic is up for approval.
Board, any questions on this one?
No, other than I'm excited that we are hiring, and this must be kind of our last fill for our special ed spot, so this is great.
All right, we'll take a motion.
I'll move to approve all new hires.
I will second.
That goes to Vicky. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? That carries. Okay, so we'll move to item C, acceptance of gift to Prescott School District from Afton Apple.
So I'm going to have Malone Elementary Principal, Ms. Sarah Dusick, come to the podium and introduce our guests.
All right, so this is my delayed good news. I'd like to invite Sarah Parkos and her mom Cindy up. She's probably not going to come up, but invite them up. Every year, Afton Apple is so generous in supporting our schools, and tonight is one of their nights where they're going to surprise us with a support that they have for us again.
Here we go.
Hi, can you hear me? Good?
Yep.
I'm Sarah from Afton Apple Orchard. I'm here with my mom, Cindy, and my daughter, Mackenzie. Thanks for inviting us to the school board meeting. This year kicks off our 34th year of being family owned and operated. We've learned a lot about being optimistic, creative, and resilient these past 34 years. We spend a lot of our time strategically planning. We map crop rotations, organize plantings, coordinate harvest dates, prepare the soil, and finally plant a variety of crops. After the plants are in the ground, we commit to fertilizing, weeding, watering, and doing whatever it takes to protect those crops through the harvest time, whether it be in 30 days or 5 years. With that, we can only hope that the decisions we made along the way were the right decisions and enough to keep our farm going. And to make things even more exciting, we never know what Mother Nature has in store for us. The crops we work so hard to grow can be wiped out in minutes from curveballs from nature. Entire farms can be devastated from frost during blossom, invasive bugs, straight-line winds, hailstorms, or a tornado. This is the part where we remember the saying, when it rains, look for rainbows, and when it's dark, look for stars. We have hired helicopters to fly all night to circulate the air at blossom time, crossing our fingers that no storms come later that year. We've also repaired damaged buildings from straight-line winds, hoping that our customers would come pick there in a couple of days. We've cleared tree debris out of our corn maze from a tornado, trusting that our visitors would consider it an educational experience. Although frustrating that sometimes things are completely out of our hands, we do our best to be creative and find opportunities through challenges. Not every idea has been a home run, but we wouldn't have learned that if we hadn't tried. After all, our most challenging moments can offer us the greatest opportunities for growth. Each day we have a choice. We can decide if it's one day or day one. Over the years, we've noticed that many family traditions are being pushed by the wayside. Therefore, we work hard to focus not only on growing nice crops, but also providing a memorable experience to keep family traditions alive. We're often asked why we are so dedicated to keeping the farm going with the ever-changing laws, agri-attainment regulations, and new housing developments closing in around us. It's because days like these, being able to be giving back to our community that grew up alongside us and having the opportunity to make a difference in someone's life makes it worth the uphill climb. We are fortunate to have so many loyal customers stop out year after year. The Prescott community has been a great part of our journey. They have been a part of our story since the beginning when we had only one ratty tire swing. They've supported us through less than perfect crops, building additions, growing pains, and more. They've been our biggest cheerleaders through some of the toughest times, and for that we are forever grateful. One of my favorite signs in the orchard is the thank you sign upon leaving the farm. It says, "You had a choice and you chose us." We never take it for granted that customers choose to come to our farm. Great communities are built by people with a variety of backgrounds. Some people are given generous opportunities with perfectly laid out paths, while others are silently struggling to get by. We've supported the Hastings Food Shelf and the Prescott Food Pantry to offer families fresh produce and donated funds to support purchasing more essentials. We were so involved in keeping the day-to-day operations going last year that we didn't organize any fundraisers for Prescott schools like we've done for the past 5 years. Investing in future generations is a lot like farming. Some investments are seen right away, while some investments take time and extra care until you finally see the results. A great quote comes from Robert Louis Stevenson: "Don't judge each day by the harvest you reap, but by the seeds that you plant." Investing in our youth is the best opportunity for a great future. We are excited to be offering 2 scholarships this year to graduating seniors this spring. At a middle school parent committee meeting, I heard about a middle school enrichment opportunity for a retreat by Youth Frontiers. The mission of the retreat is to provide experiences that inspire character, civility, and community. They offer students day-long retreats that focus on timeless values like kindness, courage, and respect. As a family farm, we have worked alongside some incredible youth, and practicing these values are truly the building blocks of a hardworking future. We wanted to make sure that that was an opportunity available to all 7th and 8th grade students this March, and have already sponsored the payment of $3,300. In recent years, Malone Elementary has worked to upgrade the deteriorating playground equipment. Playground time is imperative for giving kids an outlet to be creative and independent. Therefore, we feel that contributing to upgrading the equipment is a great way to help the entire Prescott community through youth development. A few structures at the elementary school have already been installed, and they're already new favorites. We are excited to support the next phase with a donation of $10,000. Through the past 6 years of fundraising efforts for Prescott schools alone, we have been able to donate over $47,000 to supporting the students of Prescott. We encourage you to go ahead and take the road less traveled and enjoy the adventure. Be kind, offer a helping hand, get involved in the community. Don't forget the impact a small gesture may have. In the words of Dr. Seuss, "To the world, you may be one person, but to one person, you may be the world." Thank you to the Prescott community for your continued support. We are so grateful to be the farm where memories are made.
Sarah, once again, to your family, to Afton Alps. Mackenzie, what a great treat, and we can get to enjoy that playground for years to come. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Just to clarify, Rick, it's Afton Apple.
Oh, what did I say?
Afton Alps.
Alps. Oh,
Afton
yeah.
Alps.
It's because I recently did go skiing, believe it or not, at my age. Was that scary?
And I wish Mrs. McNary was still here to hear that great letter, because you are always so thoughtful in your writing and stuff. So that's part of the joy of the donation for me, is just hearing what you have to say. So thank you.
Thank you.
All right, so we are ready to accept a gift.
Yeah, you do have to accept based on board policy.
Right.
I move to accept. It's being typed in. I move to accepting the gift from Afton Apple of over $10,000 to Prescott School District in accordance with Board Policy 7230.
I second.
We have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? That one carries. All right, so now we're moving on, and it's already updated in the agenda here. Item D is a facility use contract.
Yes, this was one that is a good problem to have, as we've been able to expand our facilities, have access to this high school. The school district owns and is responsible for many fields and property that includes our buildings, equipment, indoors and outdoors. Being publicly funded, there's many pressures to kind of open our school facilities and equipment to extracurricular activities that are under the guise and supervision of the school district. In addition, the school board has policies that opens and wants to extend an opportunity for non-school related events to take advantage of our facilities, both indoors and outdoors. But understand that there is an increased potential for equipment damage, liability, and exposure. Over the last few months, we've been following up on our policy 7510 that specifically identifies the protocol and following the guidelines that are now posted on our website since the beginning of the academic year. We have been working with our district insurance company. They have provided our board a one-page document on something that is aligned with the mission and vision of our school board policy 7510. In our policy, it does specifically state that any external activity that is using our facilities does have to carry their own liability insurance because our insurance does not cover non-sponsored and out businesses or individuals. Under that guidance, we also want to make sure that we're following the letter of the law with regards to our board policy to differentiate whether or not participants and the type of insurance that is in place. The board did go into closed session to get additional information from its legal counsel and also to review the parameters of the types of insurance and the different liabilities. At this point, the administration is supportive of extending an opportunity for the Prescott Wrestling Tournament. The Prescott Wrestling Group to host a tournament in the Prescott Public Schools during the month of March 2023. And so wanted to see if there's any conditions or clarifications that the board has prior to directing us to kind of close the agreement.
Does anybody want to take a shot at this or?
I don't mind just kind of one of the questions that we had. One of the reasons we pulled this forward is because one of the questions we had was after reviewing the specific policy, did it align with our, I should say the quote that was provided by the insurance company. We looked to make sure that it aligned with our policy, and we think at this time that generally it does align with policy. But there was one question with that quote, which that it specifically lays out what kind of activities it covers. It did not specifically lay out wrestling. And so that was just kind of one of our questions that I would like to see some follow-up with, is just making sure that the quote that was provided includes wrestling and understanding that it's a wrestling event. And then I'm fine with approving it from that standpoint. That would be the condition for me.
Does anybody else have any color here to add? No? No. I think you summed it up nice, Tanya. Thank you. All right. If there's no further discussion, we can make a motion here. Unless you want to wait till Rick is done typing. There we go.
I move to approve the external facility rental agreement with Prescott Wrestling Club to host a multi-state and team tournament in March 2023 under conditions specific to ensure policy aligns with wrestling as a sport.
I'll second it.
We have a motion and a second. Let's just roll call quick, okay? Pat? Aye. Tanya?
Aye.
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 I'm gonna abstain.
Thank you. All right, motion carries. Thank you, everyone. And we'll move on to item, I guess it's E, right? So consider first reading of the updated board policies for 31.2.
Yeah, so we're going to kind of chunk these. There are 7 policies that are up for first reading. The first 2 are very specific to either individual programming that we provide for students who are bilingual or historically referred to as English language learners. Within our district, we have 5 students. This policy just specifies that we do have a program in place and that we do screen and monitor the progress of those students. It really is just a compliance issue. There is nothing that I would see as out of the ordinary. In addition, the next one, 2460, is an independent educational evaluation that is specific to special education. It's when families are concerned about whether or not the fairness or the equity of the evaluation that was done in-house is matching what their concerns are. What this independent evaluation does is that it is paid by the district and then it provides an opportunity for dialogue to bridge the gap between the independent evaluation and district information. The primary difference here is that it does provide a cap of $400 on that independent evaluation. It can go higher if it is petitioned to the district administrator or then a hearing among the board. Then the second chunk is specific to kind of our library media centers. And I did want to pull that up on the board for you to look at, or the community to see as well, if I can remember where I put it. Let's see, this is it.
That's what mine says too.
Give me 1 second as I navigate to that.
I know the link doesn't show it.
I thought I opened this.
Maybe it does.
Oh, maybe I closed it. All right, here we are. Give me a sec. First, I wanted to thank Joan Simon and Erica Kieser, and our teaching and learning administrative staff and some teachers. They have been working on this. Basically, it starts off with how do you term your libraries? So we call them library media centers. So you basically, as you read these, anything that is read or stricken are options that the administrative team has not selected. If there is an X, that means that we are selecting that. Really, the first part is about kind of the goals of the district and the goals of the library media center. A through H, they're pretty straightforward with regards to kind of what is the role and function of a library and media center, trying to align our and support and enrich the standards and benchmarks, provide personal interest, comprehensive and coordinated collections, all the way down to obviously that we would like to have and foster a love of reading and lifelong learners. In addition, it says that how we go about purchasing books, understand that we do get financed by the state of Wisconsin. We do receive library aid. That aid is specific to and goes into a category that can only be used on the purchase of materials that stay within the library or are rented out. Not rented out, but loaned out with regards to library practices. In addition, people can make donations to our media centers. We do have another policy, and that references it with 7230. Obviously, that's been kind of in the news, and what people might want to be aware of is that this is a policy that had multiple options. We, in concert with our library media staff, have agreed that if there was a challenge, what is your process? And our district currently does not have a library media policy. And so we wanted to make sure that we had something in place and be proactive. Specifically, this would be very similar. We have a policy if a parent was concerned about the type of curriculum or resources that are used in the classroom, there is a policy that allows that. This is just to specify what would be the process. It would have to be in writing. It would be delivered to the district administrator, and it would identify the author, title, and publisher. The second would be that the district would identify a committee, and the committee would review the concerns or the complaint of the parent or the student, and how would that go? Right now, we have looked at that it would be age appropriate or developmentally appropriate would be kind of the criteria. And the recommendation at this point is that we would have a building level administrator. We would include 2 teachers, the school librarian. We did not mark this reading specialist or language arts teacher, only to say that we didn't want to be tied in to specifically that title, but that is obviously something that we would typically be looking to include. We would have 2 members of the community, and then 6 and 7, we're looking for dialogue from the board about whether or not you would want to have a school board member on that hearing committee, or would you want it to be brought forward to the board of the whole? And then once you got to secondary, whether or not the school board would like to include a student. And then the question is, do you want to use existing groups, or how would you select that student? And one of the recommendations from our 2 media specialist was to draw upon the student councils. We have a student council at 4th and 5th grade, we have a student council at the middle school, and we have a student council at the high school. So let me stop there and just see if there's any input or concern about the number. We're trying to make it manageable and something that we could convene. We really haven't experienced this type of challenge before, but we did think it would be good to be proactive. And so we have kind of 3 questions. Is the number of participants and whether or not you would like to have a school board member as a singleton, and then secondary students participate.
Yeah, I'm going to open it up here. Pat, do you have any comments or questions about this, in particular on 6 and 7 with school board member and secondary student, or anything else on the committee?
So this is just first reading, right? And
that is accurate.
Yeah.
Time for consideration. Just the 2 things maybe that jump out at me, maybe 3 things. Is it odd that there's a member of the community? Maybe. So that's one that I would probably want some more input on and question. I do think right now I would advocate a school board member be on there. And I think that frankly addresses my member of the community. And then I don't know if it's the place for a student to be on there. So just off the top of my head, quick reactions. Those are the 3 that I would want to think about.
So you would advocate for a school board member?
I would.
And you're open to dialogue around community members and secondary student, maybe?
Yes, yep, that's
okay.
my heads up.
Okay. Tanya?
I just had a general question. Would this committee be formed every time there was a material that was in question?
That's how it would be, yes. And it could be either a standing committee that would be then called forward if it's challenged, or at the time of the receipt of a concern.
And is there any kind of threshold where we would just screen things out and say, we're not even going to convene a committee? Just out of curiosity.
Yeah,
I mean, I feel like, because that could be like, open up a really big thing.
Yeah. So our media center staff reviews its collection on an annual basis. And so we are churning through books with regards to, obviously there are things that are, staples that are in each of the
I guess just to clarify, I'm not asking for us to review I'm saying if one is formally brought forward, is there any point that we would just say, this aligns with, or is it a committee every single time?
At this point, it's saying that a committee, because if the difficulty is how do you navigate for one person's concern, there's somebody else that wants it to be accessible. Yeah. We do work with families in that there are options. Families, obviously can work with our librarians if they say there's a book that they don't want their child to read.
Sure. Right.
Parents have that discretion, right? What we're looking at is that what you may not want in the library shouldn't necessarily be dictated to other families.
I would 100% agree. And I just worry that I could fill this out for once a week on something, and I just worry about that. And maybe that's something that we relook at if we need to. But then to answer your questions, number 5, I probably would not have a community member on there either. I mean, this is a school district education decision here. I think probably, I would agree with the school board member is fine. I also do not think that students need to be here, because I think some of this stuff becomes politicized more than it needs to bring students into. And I think maybe it's a committee. I would love to see maybe there are some kind of standards of how we would screen out a request right away and not even get to this level. And maybe that's where we have student involvement, right? As we kind of set that threshold for these are the materials that we're not even going to form a kind of committee for, I guess. But anyways, yeah. I think it's probably really good that we're putting this in place. It is very similar to kind of we don't have a committee though, but similar to curriculum where we can kind of pull that out and have conversations about it. But, and then this didn't pop up when we looked at it at home. It goes to a thing. So now I'm looking at it, but it says within 10 business days. Okay. Yep.
And actually, we meant to say 10 school days, so
Okay.
I didn't catch that.
Okay.
And actually, on your agenda, if you click on Neola,
Okay.
So we ran into a formatting issue, and I apologize. It was a PDF, but it wasn't showing the strike-throughs, and we couldn't figure out why. But we did fix that, but it was late. But if you click on Neola, you will see what is here.
Okay.
But I kept what was there. So I will make sure that it says 10 school days. Obviously, when you get into business days and the way we have PD and other things, we don't want to be crammed into that. So it does.
And that's the initial meeting.
Right.
Okay.
And so it has basically then a procedure. There would be an identification from this committee of somebody that would be the chairperson that would kind of run and facilitate it. The next kind of piece is that they can submit an appeal to me. And then I also can then, in writing to the school president within 10 days. The other piece that I think is of where I would like some input from you is that so that you don't just continue to have the same collection being targeted every year, there's two stipulations. And this is something that is very similar. And we've been reviewing both the national and kind of state guidelines for libraries. And that is that the material that is challenged stays in place until the committee has made its final decision. Then once the final decision is made, then it stands for a period of years. So that it's not like next week I then just come back and challenge it. The recommendation by our media specialist was that then it would stand in place for 5 years. Part of it was, I don't think there's a magic number. But we wanted to make sure that we drew the attention, that we're looking at the challenge of a specific content area or selection would not be then brought up in 5 years. The other question is it 3 years based on how a board might turn over? So that, if there are recommendations on that number, that would be something that we would want to, if you want us to consider or go back and ask other people, but that was brought forward to us.
I want to keep getting some feedback here from the other side of the table here. Vicki?
Well, I agree with Tanya on there needs to be some criteria that some of these things maybe are checked off the list right away and don't have to go to a committee. Only because, same thing, I don't want to see this becoming a weekly process. So I don't know how we set that up. I don't know how we.
So this has never happened before, right? Just for clarity, we've never had a formal complaint or anybody make a phone call that, hey, get this book off the shelf.
I think we've have we had, Michael?
You don't have to get into the details of it. Is it a common occurrence?
Yeah. Not here.
No, so I spent like 3 hours with these ladies going over this stuff. Specifically to that, there have been informal ones where Joan has gotten a call about a particular thing. They're able to talk through it with the parent, read more of the book, things like that, and they have informally solve the issue. This is just if it goes past working with the librarian and with the principal and that doesn't work, they want to make a formal challenge to the book. The other part is, I know one of them that you're sticking on is the community members. So previously, they had what they considered a policy. It's more of a practice and guideline, and they were going off of that. They used to say 2 parents, and we had the conversation of why do they have to be parents that could only read this book? What about the broader community, because it is the hub of our community, our schools. So that's why it could be a parent, but it also could not be a parent. We didn't, again, want to be hamstrung to, they've got to be parents. More than likely, we would look for parents. And that was and then the other one was like the secondary students. And that was a conversation we had too, of having someone who generationally is closer to that generation, maybe has a different perspective than anyone else would have. And we thought that they could bring to the table maybe a fresh set of eyes that maybe if it's an older committee, we would not necessarily think that way. So that's why they were suggesting to have the student. And originally their plans were just a student from that building. But as we talked about it more, if an intermediate student or an elementary or even a middle school family challenges something, is that, let's say it's a 7th grader, another 7th grader reading that book may not truly understand how that fits into the broader scope of life. So that's why we put secondary student on there. So that means it's going to be either an upper middle school or a high school student that would also read the book with us. At least that's what we look for on that committee, again, for that fresh perspective. But Joan said she could remember 1 or 2 informal times that in the last 12 years that she's aware of.
Okay.
So, Brian, do you think it would be very beneficial to have someone from the student council, a high school student, participating in something like this if needed?
I think personally, yes. I think like as a student, if something like this ever happened, I'd always want my voice to be heard, but I do understand the concerns that you have with having a secondary student. But I personally think it would be beneficial.
Okay.
Yeah, thanks, Michael. Just to kind of follow up on my thoughts here, yes, school board member, I'm in for having at least one school board member on there. I'm also, I think having a member or 2 of the community wouldn't be a bad idea.
How would you select who that is?
That was my next question, right? That's my next question is I think the selection of the committee is really important. And as well, in the secondary student, I agree with Ryan. I think having that student perspective, if it's a high school student or a student appropriate to, provide input, I think that would be good. I know you kind of get a lot of voices in the room, and then sometimes nothing really gets accomplished that way, but I would be for having community members and a secondary student and a school board member, but I think that the selection process needs to be ironed out.
I would be okay with it if it was predetermined, like how this is decided who is.
I don't think it'd just be anybody randomly that just shows up and says, I want to be on the committee, and we got to let them on.
Then when it comes to student, I think of a couple of different options. I think of our student council. They're elected individuals by their student body.
They're representing. I like that idea of a student council member.
Or we have a media class where I think they study this kind of stuff, where I think that would be another natural place to have these kind of conversations. But again, to me, I would want more on the selection process. So it's just kind of decided. And because in the moment, it's kind of too late to decide, I think.
Absolutely. Thank you.
So this is a first reading. Yep. So in the first reading, we still have to go through a second reading, but as part of the first reading, do we want to include a member of the school board and a secondary student member?
So I was kind of wondering, I think I ask this every time, and it's like I just don't quite understand, but what are we approving? So why is this not in the discussion section anyways? And so like now you have, just like the calendar discussion, now we have more information that we need. Yeah. We're going to clarify it more. Like, I don't feel comfortable approving anything.
Yeah, so it really is, according to Neola, and Maria has been working with, is it Dean? David. The protocol is that you're approving the first reading, but your policy is upon second reading it becomes the true policy of the district. So it's acknowledging that it was presented to the community, that it was in open, that you had discussions, and that it's in their recommendation is to formally basically say you've acknowledged that you've had the first reading with this dialogue, and then the second time is what you're finalizing with any tweaks. So it's really more of a not a performance, it's a protocol.
Yeah.
Maria, do you have a better word?
How do you explain this to keep it clean? Like in the first one, you will discuss it, you go through it, you make changes like now, we mark it, then we propose like a cleaner version. It was all done in open session.
Right. If we don't approve the first reading tonight, that means it's going to have to come back 2 more times.
Yes.
And I think with all the changes we're asking for, or clarifications on things, I think we almost have to, don't we?
Well, normally it'll come back. No, we approve on a second reading, so it'll automatically come back to us. It just feels weird for me to say we approve the first reading of this updated material. We do not approve the material, and we do approve the reading of the material. I understand that part. So yeah, it has to go back for revamping no matter what because of our policy.
So policy and protocol, two different things, right?
Yeah.
We want to direct the administration to provide us with a selection process, for instance, maybe on how a committee gets performed. I had one more question, Rick, about the procedure for a committee does a committee bring a recommendation to the school board and the school board has the final say, or does the committee have the final say?
It comes to me, but then it can be appealed to the board.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah. And basically it's, Joan and Erica kind of brought this, that is, as they said, over the 12 years, this has not been an issue within our schools. Most of the time it's solved informally. But given that if something goes sideways, we didn't have any parameters of what to do next. And so our recommendation was to kind of work on this, and they've been working on it since last year, and with many different administrators and Michael's guidance, of course. And I think what I'm taking away so far is kind of the makeup of the committee, the selection. We have to talk about how that selection process would be done. And I think for maybe even clarification of, like we have example, the student council or media class, but we also could say whether or not it has to be a student. It could be, it may, and if a student is included, then it would be from these groups. So I think those are ways that we can come back with alternatives for you to kind of help us finalize this. I think the one thing I did want to just, do you have any input, guidance on if this is appealed all the way up to a school board and you finally render a judgment, how many years do you think that should stand in place before you would want to have the same content or material come back to you?
The media specialist recommended 5.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Whatever the policy states for the current, so if it's 5 years, I'd say that's just would be good practice. Maybe bring it back.
All right. And obviously, if there's other comments and things like that, Michael and I will continue to work with Erica and Joan on this. Obviously, this is available as of Friday. It'll be on our website. And so if it's an issue, people will most definitely reach out to us as they have.
So just to be clear, are we going to check 6 and 7 on the item C there?
I think they're going to give us some more clarification, and then we can choose what we think about it.
Yeah. Okay.
So it feels like this isn't going to be the first reading tonight, though. I mean, we need to either postpone or table until next month for the first reading of this document. It sounds like there's a lot of changes, a lot of things to be figured out.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's fair enough.
We can pull this one out.
Yep. The last section, I just wanted to make sure some of this is in statute, and it's just about parental or police access to records within and about library information. Families have the right in statute to gain information about their children's use of library materials for students under the age of 16. In addition, the law enforcement does have and can conduct review of library records if it's in relationship to an alleged criminal conduct. So it's not that the police can come in here and just request the information. It would have to be that it's a alleged criminal conduct that they would be following up. And lastly, it's about student fines. Presently, I do not believe that we charge fines for any books. It's only if the book is damaged or lost. We usually ask the family to assist us in replacing. Did I say that accurately? Okay, thank you. Any questions or concerns about the fines or the?
What's the significance of 16 and why not 18?
It's that's straight from statute. It's just
what's
yeah. You can I think. Well, I'd have to check. I'd have to get back to you if you can go. No, you can't go higher. You could probably go lower, right? Okay.
You can't go higher.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Thanks.
Okay, so we'll be expecting another reading next month.
Yep. All right. Open enrollment program, you're going to hear more about what our recommendation is on that later tonight. We were not making any major significant changes on that. A lot of it is definitions, and I'm just trying to get past there. I don't think there's anything controversial in this. This was reviewed by the administrative team. Also, Jackie Montreal that assists us with open enrollment, and Sandy Strand.
So was the green on this the new stuff though?
Yes.
So there was quite a bit of new stuff on this one, if I remember. Okay.
Yeah, and basically these are the updates and consolidation of what is currently either in law, statute, or rules. Basically, it's just, it delineates right now, we're coming up on open enrollment periods. There are two. One is formal, and then there is also another informal process. Then based on what you're about to take action on later tonight is about districts have the right to close certain programs, and we've done this on an annual basis. This is just specifying how you do that. If you deny somebody open enrollment, you have to reference back to the January meeting of every year when you make the formal disclosure about what you're open to and close to. So it's just making sure that the different statutes and things like that are in alignment. Nothing is really changing within how we currently process anything within the district or within how the state guidelines are. It's just putting it all into one policy and updating it.
Rick, just really quick down on the annual review, I think I'm in the right policy. If you scroll all the way down. Yeah, the stuff in red there, the school board delegates the authority, is that stricken or is that new?
Strict.
It's going away. It's
I think
Is that
red
going away?
Going away.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah. It's done above, right? Who reviews it? It basically is delegated to the district administrator to accept or deny based on what the board has already put in place.
All right. Any other questions or comments on this one? A lot of policies.
Yes. The next two are really straightforward, so I don't think you have to go through word for word. You have access to it. It basically specifies that we do have video cameras. We have video cameras on our buses. We have video cameras in our hallways. Basically, this is just stating that when you do, there are certain areas that we cannot film, bathrooms, locker rooms, right? And then it also says that we will put a notice on the front entrance of every school. And if you notice, on Malone Intermediate, we have purchased additional signage and have made sure that I think that has been added to every building. I know MIS has. All of our buses that have cameras, we do not have cameras on every bus, but on the buses that have cameras, it is on when you enter that bus. So that is with regards to that. The notification of educational options, that is on our annual notices. We also had to publish that. Maria sent that to the paper. It was published in the Pierce County Journal this week. So this is, again, just something that is very specific. The last two, I'll just, Nicole is here if you have any questions. So I'll pull that up. And this is just our food service policy and how we deal with if people go in the rear with regards to how many days or how much money somebody is in the rears before we reach out to them. My understanding is that we're going with $20, right? And versus 50. It's first to identify. You might have seen in the news that since the state and federal government no longer are subsidizing 100% of all families, that some districts are running into a large amount of debt. There was a recent story that went district by district about over $20,000 sometimes in accounts. I've been working with Nicole. We are not anywhere in that zip code of debt. We have both a very supportive community. With Angel Funds, we work with our counselors for any family that has difficulty. Also, families that change status with regards to income, losing jobs. There's paperwork for that. Nicole, you're on it. I think the biggest thing, Nicole, if you wanted to share, is that we do not food shame students. So if students do not have money in their accounts, there had been districts that either stamped students' hands or put something or made them eat a meal that was dramatically different, and then therefore you knew that they didn't have that. We are allowing them to still have a full meal, hot or cold, that is provided at the school. So the goal is that it would be indifferent. Our job is to make sure that our students have the food and nutrition they need to be an active participant.
Any questions on this one?
Just a quick one. What page would it be? It's towards the top. It talks about, there's a paragraph, the board shall approve and implement nutrition standards governing the types of food and beverages that may be sold on the premises. Are we looking for board, so stuff that's in the a la carte line, I mean, does this apply to concessions sold at sporting events? I mean, how?
So there's a separate policy that goes over.
Nicole, can I ask, just, why don't you come to the mic just so that.
Sorry, Nicole.
No.
That's why I came.
Yep, you're good.
So there's a separate policy that covers that. Mainly what it's for is if the school store, so you all voted on this a long time ago, predating me, that they can't sell food at the same time. So that way kids are kind of focused on what is approved. So we can make sure, hey, like you have the 3 components that you need, you're eating healthy. You know, we do like a little check-in, like we have a couple of students that are really food secure, like, oh, what are you eating today? Like, awesome, go get some more vegetables. So we just make sure that we get to table touch them and do that, and there's no compete. So there is a completely separate policy that covers that.
All right.
Okay.
Thank you, Nicole.
All right. Any other questions, feedback on this one?
Anyone?
Okay. The last one, I'm going to turn it over to the board president, Mike Masick, and Tanya Hollab. This is with regards to public participation at board meetings, and I will have it on the screen.
So this one's been in the works for a long time. It's gone through many revisions just in over the last couple, 18 months, it seems. We pick it up and put it down and pick it up and put it down. So I finally wanted to just get some visibility around it as to what we're looking at. I'm not going to read this word for word, but what the intention was just to provide more clarity around the public comment section, more rules around how long a speaker can speak, how long the public participation part of the meeting is, and just a little bit more clarity around some of the rules around what you can and can't talk about, I guess. So we kept it pretty much, the format is the same. And so I'll just kind of scroll through this. The first part, Rick, can you just scroll up? That requesting an agenda item, I copied, that's basically what the current policy is for that section of the public participation policy, requesting an agenda item. It's the same as it was before, so nothing changed there. Scrolling through this public comment section of the meeting, we're going to designate 30 minutes unless board action is taken. So maximum 30 minutes for public comment is the way this reads now. So I'll get to the questions and comments here after I get through this, and if you guys want to talk about this, we can. But at this point, 30 minutes, and then the current speaker would be considered the last speaker unless there's board action to extend the public comment section. Recognizing the speakers kind of went around on this one. We ended up sticking with what we do now. Speakers want to be recognized, they just approach the podium, state their name and municipality and what they're going to talk about, and go with that approach. A lot of school districts that I've talked to and policies that I've seen do the cards, and you got to sign it, you got to register through a card, and then all the cards come to the board chair, and then we just recognize each speaker that way. We're going to keep it the way this is proposing is to leave it the way it is and let the process stay the same. So Individual time limits, 3 minutes. If the person is speaking on behalf of a group of 3 or more people that would like, that would the way this reads, I'm just looking at it again, designated spokesperson.
They would have 6 minutes in total.
6 minutes, but I think we're basically saying that the people that they're speaking on behalf of would be named individuals. So I'm Mike Matzik, I'm speaking on behalf of Tanya, Pat, Vicky, and so that gets read in. I think that was the purpose of that. So if that's the case, then that person would say that at the beginning of the of their allotted time, and we would grant them up to 6 minutes for that group. The rest of this is kind of boilerplate. I'm going to keep kind of scrolling through this. I'm hoping you guys took a look at this. If you have any questions, we can take them. I'm going to get down to the rules for public comment. Nothing really earth-shattering here. There's some ambiguity about what they could come up and speak about, and whether or not it has to be on the agenda, whether it can be something else. The way this reads now is that a speaker can come up and talk about a topic that is not on the agenda. And I think that the rationale for that is we've seen that in the past. We've actually seen it recently with a group that, wanted to approach us about, the facility, a facility in the high school here. And if we didn't have it on the agenda, they wouldn't have technically by policy been able to speak. So I think we'll leave it that where it does not need to technically be on the agenda. That's the way this reads now. If you want to have dialogue on that, we can do that too. Comments are directed at the board and not to staff. I'm not going to go through all of this, guys. Another person on the board.
I think one thing, Mike, and I don't remember offhand the exact wording, but you can speak, it doesn't have to be an agenda item, but it does have to be within the purview of what a board can.
Yes. Yes, it has to be within and it says it in here.
It does.
Let me find it. It has to be something that the board can oversee within the scope of the board. And I think it might be right in the first paragraph.
I think it is, Mike.
Yeah.
So
lessons.
It is not a forum to express one's self-comment on issues that are not related to school board business. So it has to be about school board business. It can't be about something that we do not have oversight on. Thanks for calling that out.
Yeah, it says members an opportunity to provide input directly to the school board about issues that fall within the school board's authority. So just to be really specific that if it's not within our authority, which is at the governance
Yeah, I'd say
level.
like state politics is a good example where somebody comes up and starts talking about vote out the governor. No, that's outside of our policy. We can't control that.
Or about specific businesses or something the community kind of protects. It's just not an open mic session.
Right. And then moving down, there's some prohibited conduct examples. I would just encourage you to read through that, and if you think there's anything in there that should be changed or updated, feel free to suggest it. I think that's about it there.
Mike, I'm sorry, I had to step out for a personal matter.
Yeah, go ahead.
Did you mention anything about response from the board to the speaker?
Yes, that is also in here, and let me see if I can find it, Steve.
It's right there.
Right there.
District response after public comment. Yeah, so this section right here. Presiding officer may ask the district administrator or designee to provide clarifying information to the school board. So I think it still opens up the opportunity for, if it's just a simple question, we can have the district administrator answer that question right now. But in general, school board is not going to act on any comments that are made during the meeting.
And the reason why, and maybe that should be part of this, is because if it's not part of our agenda, and posted ahead of time, we can't make decisions on those kinds of things. So we run into some issues with that, and maybe that should be clarified on this. Not because we don't want to. There's so many times I want to, but it's not an agenda item. So we have to be very careful about what we do respond to.
I think even if it is an agenda item, it's still, it's on the agenda. We will talk about it, but we're not going to have a back and forth dialogue with a member of the public during this section. So I think, does that answer your question, Steve?
Yep, thank you.
Any other questions or thoughts?
I just wanted to say that one of the reasons that we had the conversation about this was because we had a sudden interest in board activity, which was awesome, and a lot of people that were here at board meetings, which was great. But so many people didn't understand even how to have an agenda item added to the board. So this just kind of clarifies how the community can participate with board meetings, and I hope it just answers questions, and people can kind of understand as they're standing up to podium why we expect certain things, why you have to, say your name, so they can better prepare for those meetings as well.
Correct, and I think one protocol will be we'll have something baked into the agenda that I'll read about public comment, and just a boilerplate sentence or two for the public so they know the basic rules and where to find them too, the more detailed rules. So
I would like to call out one other thing, which is at the very bottom almost, and it talks about prohibited conduct, and I have heard from many people in the community that they are intimidated at times to speak at a board meeting, in part because of some of the actions of the audience. So the clapping, the cheering, the booing. And so we specifically call that stuff out because one of our goals here is that we're able to hear all voices that have an opinion of a matter. And so that is specifically called out here. And I do want to point that out because we have allowed some of that in the past, but that is something that we're asking that people, out of respect for others, not participate in.
anybody else have any questions or comments on this? Is it good enough for a first reading?
Well,
you think?
Tanya was just saying you've got that information for like the speaker calling that out, but you really don't have, do we need to put in a conduct for like people
the audience.
in the audience?
Yeah, we could clarify that. I was thinking that too, Vicki, as we were reading this, the clapping and cheering and booing, vocalizing approval
during public
for a speaker.
Yeah.
So for the speaker not being able to do that?
Well, no, for the audience, while someone is getting up and addressing.
It says members of the public may not engage. Should we clarify that? It's right above that paragraph when it's describing. So where you see that A, making comments that incite violence, it starts with members of the public may not engage in conduct. And then below are just those examples.
I still don't see it. Why am I not?
And if it's not very clear, we can call that out a little bit more.
Members' conduct. Yeah, I think.
Should we say members of the audience or members of the public, including the audience and speaker?
Correct.
Or something like that? Okay.
Yep.
Yeah.
Because ultimately, I mean, we still have to do a business meeting, so we need to maintain kind of a process and procedure and keep the meeting moving forward, and interruptions like that just end up slowing stuff down and making meetings end up going longer, and we have a lot of business that has to be done at our business meetings, so.
If we're good with it, we can leave it in the list of policies that we want to acknowledge for a first reading. And again, if you want to go through it again and read it and give some more feedback, we can try to incorporate that back in for next month. and have a little bit more dialogue on it and make a decision whether or not we want to vote it in as our official second reading and get it into policy.
Does anybody want to pull it out to be not included in the first readings? So then maybe what we can do is we'll move forward as if it's the first reading, and then in the meantime, at the second reading, if you would like to, because you've had more time to reflect on it or hear from the community, we can pull it out at that time and not include it in the second reading piece. So.
Yeah.
All right. Ryan, any thoughts on public comment? Should we let it happen? Let the public speak? All right.
I think public comment is great.
Only for 30 minutes though. No, I'm just kidding. Upon board action. Yeah. All right. That was the last of the policies, right? So we can make a motion to move on here.
I move to approve first reading of updated board policies listed above, with the exception of policy 2522, Library Media Center.
I'll second. Go ahead.
Tanya.
Go ahead, Tanya.
I'll second.
We have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? That carries. Let's move on. Item F, open enrollment programs.
All right, so Sandy Strand's going to represent the administration on this. This is an annual requirement, and it is required in the month of January prior to the February statewide open enrollment. So we have the specified statute and all that information. Sandy has been working diligently on this and is recommending a different methodology than we've used before. And so we're going to do a presentation to share the methodology that we're using and the choices that we're making and why certain programs are being closed. And let me get your slides up. And I think I got you. All right.
All right, thank you, members of the board. So as Dr. Spikuza mentioned, annually the school board is required to establish criteria for accepting or rejecting applications for enrollment from non-resident pupils, including in our special education programs. Historically, in a review of our previous board decisions and what has been documented, some of the requirements that are really being stressed by DPI, such as actual numbers for caps and programs, to make those determinations very clear, concise criteria to be considering is generally absent. So what the current law requires is that we must consider and declare the availability of space in schools, programs, classes, or grades within the non-resident school district, meaning us, during this board meeting in January. And in that decision-making process, we must specify criteria such as class size limits, if we were considering grade level classes, pupil-teacher ratios, and potential enrollment projections. And we must also consider pupils of siblings of pupils who have applied under these other statutory subparts and are already attending our school district. So in reviewing this, I was able to pull a document from DPI that was created in August of 2022, and ironically, it actually cites a document from the state of Minnesota called Workload Considerations for Effective Special Education. Incidentally, this document highlights the importance of considering workload, which is the number of IEPs managed, plus the service minutes, plus the number of evaluations and the amount of time available of your actual special education teachers over just looking at the straight number of kids that they have have on their caseload. Currently, I think it's important for you to know that Wisconsin DPI, Wisconsin statute, and Federal Code of Regulations do not include standards for determining caseload or workload in special education. Other states do identify caseload restrictions, such as Minnesota, which is where I pulled some of the numbers from in terms of trying to use a state that's close to us and trying to incorporate similar practice. It is recommended that our school board take action to determine that we would use a workload model in considering our numbers in our programs for the coming school year. To explain, again, this is just small print, but when I calculate out a workload for a particular teacher or a particular program, I take the total number of students in that program. So if it's cross-categorical, I take the total number of cross-categorical students and I add up their direct service minutes for the week, and then I add up a third of them, because every 3 years they're evaluated, a third of them would be evaluated, and it takes approximately 4 to 6 hours to evaluate a student. So you add that service time divided by the number of weeks in the school year, and then you divide by the number of available minutes of a teacher in a work week, and you get a ratio. And then you add that ratio then to the total number of students case managed. And so this slide and the next slide kind of explain, the next slide was taken out. So that kind of explains how that workload calculation is made. And so when we talk about our programs, generally speaking, Prescott has programs that fall under these categories. We have early childhood through grade 12 cross-categorical programs, and I'm including early childhood in this because in previous policy and in previous board decision, we didn't consider our birth to 3-year-olds to 4Ks, and this year, ironically, we've had a bit of an influx of preschool students open enrolling into our district, and that puts a great deal of strain on our staff who are already at capacity, but absent of having anything in writing from our last January board decision, we couldn't say no to those enrollees. So these programs currently include students across disability areas who spend approximately 40% or less of their day in special education. Workload totals should generally be between 10 and 17 for cross-categorical programs and not to exceed that without adding additional paraprofessional staffing. So right now, at our high school, 2 out of 3 of our cross-categorical teachers are at 17, but they also have paraprofessional staffing support. You can go on to the next slide. In our specialized programs, these are our programs for students with more significant needs that spend 50% or more of their time in special education. Based on neighboring states' caseload guidelines in statute, I've selected the 6 to 9 range for students with 2 paraprofessionals. This would include students with significant behavioral needs, students with significant medical or physical needs, or substantial levels of attendant care based on physical health or cognitive needs. We are also unable to make decisions based on disability label, federal setting, or educational environmental code. So that's why the language is a little bit more nebulous in terms of percentage of time in special education and more of a description of the types of needs that these students may present with. Next slide, please. We also want to detail out that some of our students come to us with needs that we contract for their services. So students with visual impairments or orientation or mobility needs, we currently do provide those services, but we contract with CISA 11 for this service and are billed by them according to the specified number of service minutes within their IEP. Because this is a contracted service, it's not necessarily considered available in our school district according to the Department of Public Instruction. And so we would recommend that students with those needs identified in their IEP, that open enrollment applications would be denied for students that would fall under that category. In the next category, we talk about students who have a related service of physical therapy. Currently, we contract with Baldwin-Woodville School District along with several other districts for our physical therapy contract, and we share that cost with those other districts. Because again, this is a contracted service and we really don't have the availability to expand those services, we would also want to consider that students who come to us open enrolled with physical therapy on their IEP, that we would deny those open enrollment applications. Currently, again, so this is how we have laid out, or I have laid out our programs. Our ECSE, so Early Childhood Special Education Playgroup, right now that's our 3-year-olds. We would want to, once that program gets to 7 students with disabilities, we are recommending that we close that to non-resident students. That would allow for us to then continue to increase the number of our students with disabilities who are coming to us through Pierce County and qualifying throughout the school year. ECSE and 4K speech. Currently, we have over 40 students in ECSE and 4K who receive speech services. The American Speech Language Hearing Association recommends a caseload of no more than 40. Therefore, if we received an early childhood or 4K student open enrolled application, we would, with the speech only on their IEP, we would recommend that we are closed. 4K special education. Currently, 15 students in a class is about average for a 4K classroom, and we currently have space in those programs, and based on this year's enrollment numbers, we would remain open for open enrollment and alternative open enrollment for next year. In grades K through 5, again, based on the previous description for cross-categorical programs, we look at a max of 17, a workload of 17 per teacher, and given that our current averages are between 12 and 15 at the elementary level, we would continue to be open for open enrollment for next year. Same thing in middle school. We have a varying number of students on caseloads from 9 up to 17. So right now, given the average, we would remain open to cross-categorical students who are open enrolling for middle school. High school, we currently have a max, like almost all of our teachers have 17 students on their caseloads, and we have struggled all year to obtain and maintain paraprofessional staffing. So I'm recommending that we close our high school cross-categorical programs based on difficulty to staff those special ed programs. Our ALC currently has approximately 15 students in it. If we use the same cross-categorical numbers, that would be a max of 17, and that program would remain open. Moving on, our next slide details out our specialized programming. At the elementary level, we're recommending that 6 to 8 or 6 to 9 students. And currently at our elementary level, we have a program for students with more significant disabilities at Malone Elementary. And we also have a program for students with more significant, well, we have 2 at Malone Elementary, and we have another program at MIS. And both of those are currently over 8 students. So we are closed to those programs. At the middle level, our specialized programming there for students with more significant needs currently only has 4 students. And in terms of projections for the coming year, that number does not look to be going above 8, so we would remain open for open enrollment for students with significant needs at the middle level. And then at high school, currently we are at a low number below that 6. However, we have been absent staff all year in that program, partially due to staff injury, but also because we just have not been able to procure paraprofessional staff in that program, which reduces our capacity to program for students in a manner that we need to. So we're recommending that that program is also closed for open enrollment next year. So based on the workload calculations, I would recommend that our district is closed to any open enrollment in the identified areas in the previous slides, unless otherwise specified. However, it is a legal requirement that all enrollments are considered on a case-by-case basis by the district. So even if we say a program is closed, we have to take a look at all of the paperwork, the IEP, the needs, and that it would be the recommendation that the superintendent and the director of student services then make that determination. Any questions?
I'm going right to you, Tanya.
Good. Okay, so I do have a question, and you can go to that chart towards the slides if you want, towards the end where it had like closed, and this is great.
Yep.
So one of my questions is, if we have, and it seems like you've done a lot of research, and I really appreciate it, because I think that people don't fully understand what special education teachers and their jobs encompass, and it's so much more than just kids sitting in front of them. It's paperwork and meetings and all kinds of stuff. So this is really, some of this is just looking at caseload numbers for me and students. And so I had a question when it says like program capacity and looking at all your numbers. So for example, if you go down to, I think it's, one of them was like, there's one where we had well over already what was recommended. I don't remember which one. High school programming, I think maybe down towards the bottom. And it's recommended to have 6 to 8 kids.
For the specialized programming?
Yep, the specialized programming, but we have 12, it looks like. And
are you looking at this document, or are you looking at the?
I'm looking at the one you sent, put it in.
Yeah.
Next slide.
So I was including in that first document, I included the ALC in that.
Okay.
And the ALC it's specialized programming, but it's really not.
Okay.
And so I think it would be recommended to consider the ALC a cross-categorical program, because we have a variety of students that are in there. And they only spend a portion of their day.
Okay, so like the document I'm looking at is the one that was included in the board packet, and it says high school program, 2 programs, 6 to 8, ALC, max 17, and then it's got 2 numbers. One is a 12, and then one is 8/2. And I'm not sure which ones.
One is the 12 was the ALC at the time.
Okay.
And the 8 is the number of students that are currently assigned to what we're calling the ID program, but the specialized program at the high school. But there are currently 2 teachers in that program, so that workload is actually cut in half currently. But even with that second teacher was hired primarily to provide community-based transition services, and we don't have enough paraprofessional staffing to facilitate that. So we're having to augment with occupational therapy and speech language pathology going out to job sites in the community, which isn't ideal.
Okay.
Just for the audience,
Yeah,
we have that up.
there we go.
Is it on the cross-categorical?
They said it's the bottom one, for example, the high school one I was looking at. And I guess my biggest question is, I just want to make sure that if we need to hire staff because we are over our workload, like recommended capacity, that we're hiring staff.
Yeah, I do not think that we are in need of hiring additional staffing for our specialized programs at the secondary level. We are in need of paraprofessionals.
And that your clarification with alternative high school helps me out there, because those numbers are kind of grouped there. And then, let's see. I think that was my only question, really. I appreciate how this is just kind of defined ahead of time, and this is kind of where we're at caseload management-wise. I think it's awesome that there's an equation that we're using to look at the needs of students and not just a straight number, because it is more than just a number for caseload. And I do really appreciate when it's laid out ahead of time, because a lot of the times these are emotional situations and high needs kiddos, and I just like to know that we're making decisions based on data and not about the specific, the
yeah.
situation at the time in our district, so.
And because DPI requires us to list out our numbers, like our criteria, I felt it was really important to have a non-arbitrary way to determine those numbers. And just to kind of point out on this document here, you can see for the middle programming, I know currently in that program there are 4 students, but you'll see that the current workload is 5.5 because you have to take the total 4 students and then you add up all those minutes and divide it by the minutes available, and you actually get an additional number added to that, which then reflects the added burden of the teacher and the added responsibilities that they have to take into consideration on a daily basis.
And then you brought up, and this is just more of a conversation for community and all of us to understand, is some of the services we contract with, like Baldwin you brought up, and those are low incident type cases. And the thing is that it's so low incident that we don't have enough of a need here to hire our own. And so we really are restricted with how many students we can bring in with those specific needs, because we literally don't have the staffing and are hiring per hours based on need that week. And
you're absolutely right, Tanya. And really, it's the difference between a $10,000 contract that we share with 4 other districts or $100,000 that we're paying out in salary and benefits for one staff person working with 3 kids.
And then the other clarity is that we're not talking about students that live within our boundaries of our school district. We always welcome students within our district boundaries. And like my question earlier, which is what happens when we get past our max recommendation? I think that's our responsibility as a district to look at hiring more staff or expanding programming. And we will always be willing to meet the needs of our students. This is really specifically for students that hear how great Prescott is and they want to move into our boundaries, but they're not residents here. And so this is probably far and few in between their unique situations. That's all I had.
Pat?
No questions, thank you.
Thank you.
Tanya took all your questions.
No, it was great, I understand.
Steve?
She did take all mine.
Yeah. Vicki?
I don't have any questions either. It was very thorough. Thank you.
Ryan, any questions on this one?
I don't think so.
Yeah, I think. Sandy, you're the professional here, so thank you. Very well done.
Thanks, Sandy.
So I think we have a motion to make here if this looks good. Yes.
I move to approve open enrollment programs that are closed for the 2023-2024 academic year as proposed in the workload document shared tonight.
I'll second.
Motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? That carries. We're going to go on to item G, consider approval of Prescott Public School academic calendar, sustaining collaboration time for the 23-24 academic year. You ready?
I'm ready. Yep. Rick will get the slide deck up. Really, there's 2 areas or 2 that we went to staff and we polled our staff. It was open to all of our staff, and it was around the professional development in August, which doesn't impact the school calendar, but impacts the way that we do our work. And then the other one was spring break. And again, the way that the calendar landed with a leap year next year, things like that, that kind of locks things in. So as you can see, we had 109 responses out of all of our staff. And then top right corner is asking about, do we like which one, option 1 at the top or option 2 at the bottom? Are we going 4 days in a row? Or are we going 3 and 1 and breaking it up? And the majority preferred option 1. That's why it's highlighted where we'd break that up. We'd have a 3-day, a long weekend, and then we would have professional development again that day before our 2 return to learn days. So that's going to be the recommendation. And then on spring break, there's a little bit more, is just over 50%. And again, 11% having no preference. On the 2 different options of, do we have a day off on President's Day in February to break up that 13-week gap, or 13 weeks of continuous school, or do we move and a spring break away from Easter and Good Friday, and therefore we needed a day in the calendar, and we would remove that 19th, the President's Day, as a true day off and just move things up earlier. I looked around at other districts. If we go with the 11th through the 15th, that would align to Hudson and Hastings. The 18th through the 22nd, that's River Falls and Baldwin has that selected as their spring break, and Ellsworth has the 4th through the 8th. When we talked with staff, the 11th through the 15th is sort of a repeat of this calendar. It's that second week into March. And that's just kind of where we landed. So based on those two, the next slide just gives you what the recommendation is. Again, we're still going to have 171 student days, 188 staff days built into that calendar. Again, sustaining the collaboration Mondays, and we saw the benefits of that somewhat through our report card that I shared out last time. And then also, I know a big one, especially this year with the way the weather has been, is how many snow days do we have built into the calendar? And at the secondary level, it's still over 2 days that are built into the calendar. The elementary and intermediate, based on the number of hours we need, it'll be about 7.5 days built into the calendar. And 4K is kind of the short one, and they'll end up with a late start or an early release potentially inside of their calendar. But typically we look at, and you'll see later today, Ms. Dusick will be coming up and talking about adding some Fridays to their programming. Any questions?
Yeah, Steve, do you have any questions or comments here?
I don't.
Vicky?
No.
Ryan?
No.
No questions on next year's calendar? All right, Tanya.
You heading somewhere?
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
You're coming back, aren't you?
No, I appreciate the polling of the staff and looking at that data. So looks great.
No questions?
Yeah, same, Michael. I appreciate the polling and getting this ironed out and picking the best options. It looks great. I'm glad it worked out. And again, we got another year where we're going to be done before the end of May. It's after Memorial Day, but it's before the end of May, so that's nice. So
yep, and it sustains that week break for our staff before summer school as well, so they can take
Recharge.
some time down as well. Yep.
All right, well done. We'll consider a motion.
I move to approve the 2023-2024 academic year calendar as presented with embedded Monday collaboration times.
I'll second.
We have a motion, a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? That carries. So we're going to go to item H, and that is consider graduation credits based on the move to 3-term, 6-period day.
I'm going to ask Michael to put on his other hat with teaching and learning. He's been working with Mr. Figge. We have presented this earlier for you, and he's going to walk you through tonight's presentation on what the graduation credits will be for seniors across time.
And I don't have a lot to add from the conversation last month. The second slide, though, does go over one of the things we were looking at is maintaining approximately the amount of courses that are required versus elective and courses needed for graduation. Most of the districts around us, they average between 90 and 93% of the courses are needed for graduation. Ours is 87 to 89%, so we're a little bit on the lower side. And what that allows is, one of the things we looked at with our PLCs is the impact that this is going to have on those electives. And are we prioritizing core classes over elective classes? One of the things you see is we're going to have a fine arts requirement, which over 90% of our kids already take a fine arts course, but it gives opportunities for students to explore more electives. So the next slide here, this kind of just steps through. Again, we can't just switch everything over in 1 year. We have to stepwise move it in. Again, we maintain that 80 to 89 or 87 to 89% being required year after year. And you can see science is the first one that this sophomore class will have an extra elective of science that they would have to take. And then you can see the freshmen pop up to 8 through science. So between the core classes of science, math, and ELA, and just where are we stepwising those in for our students, and we believe that this creates a balance, and then also for our staff gives them a roadmap over the next couple of years of new courses that they'll be proposing and turning on. And then some further dialogue. One of the things that we had our PLCs do and come back and give recommendations on is which courses are going to be 3 trimesters versus 2. We see that especially with mathematics, having 3 trimesters of mathematics and having students engage in that work throughout is definitely going to help for some of those required courses versus the 2 trimesters with a gap. And again, we're looking at trying to prevent as much gap as possible.
Michael, for families that are listening, to get additional information, February 7th is an important night. You already mentioned it in Good News. Can you just remind them what the 7th is?
Yeah, so February 7th, we'll start with a kickoff of everyone in the auditorium, and it'll be a presentation. Mr. Figge will go over this with them, the cum laude system, some of the additional highlights that we have of certain programming that we're adding, game design 2, all the ELA classes that we'll be adding. And then we kind of break up from there, and we have student from the National Honor Society there. They will lead tours through the building, especially for our freshman parents, to different areas. Our teachers are all going to be there and available for conversation and talk about programs. And the big one is, and I just had my planning meeting with my son who's in 8th grade with our counselor, Ms. Matamiro, and really looking at the courses that you want to take when you're a junior and senior, because you have more choices then, but then making sure that you're hitting those prerequisites previous. So if you want to take AutoCAD, there's 3 other courses that are involved with AutoCAD. You can't just take AutoCAD. So again, you just making sure that we're planning that far ahead so we don't get to a senior schedule and saying, I really want this course, but I can't get into it because of some prereq. So that's what the 7th is all about. Come and learn about our programming, learn about our AP offerings, our Chippewa Valley Technical College articulated credit and how is that different, and then some of those dual enrollment courses as well. So everyone's invited. And then again, this will be a big part of that is trying to explain this to families of, again, we're maintaining that 87 to 89% throughout and then adding those in. And you can see the fine arts for the junior class would not be required. But Mr. Figge ran the numbers and I think he told me it was 94% of our students already have fulfilled that requirement if we were to turn it on. We're choosing not to turn it on for next year, but we will be turning it on for those sophomores.
Vicki, any questions on this?
No, I think the only thing we did ask was if you could build in, we're losing that cardinal time, so did we figure out?
We are maintaining cardinal time.
Okay.
Yep.
Okay.
That was a priority.
Right?
Pardon?
Is it a little shortened?
I believe it's a little shortened from what it was from last year, something of 5 minutes.
5 minutes, yeah.
And what that builds in is sometimes, I remember I couldn't fit everything in my schedule in high school, so I did independent band, which means you learn everything on your own. You have a lesson every other week. They're able to do some independent band during that cardinal time. So cardinal time, band and choir, music courses, that's kind of reserved for that, as well as mathematics. That's where we have interventions going on. We have where students can self-select to go and see teachers at that time to get additional help as well. So that was important to maintain that in the schedule. So that is there.
Okay, good.
Yeah.
Good question. Ryan, any questions on this?
No, I think these are great adjustments, really. I think I would have appreciated them probably
Yeah.
a couple years ago.
Steve? Tanya?
No questions.
Pat?
No questions.
All right, yeah, looks good. Thanks, Michael. Take a motion.
I move to approve graduation credits based on the move to the 3-term by 6-period day.
Second.
We have a motion second. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? That carries. And last item in business, consider specific makeup dates for 4K due to weather closures. So
Ms. Dusick also oversees, she's the principal of Malone Elementary, but oversees our 4K program. And by our conversations that we go by instructional minutes, not days. And the weather has thrown us a curveball where we've had 6 events over 7 weeks. And so there are some instructional minutes that we're proposing that change the current calendar, and she's going to walk you through that.
It's a snowball.
Yeah. Literally.
Yeah. Right. Sorry, I couldn't help myself.
Couldn't resist, could you? All right, so 4K is probably the tightest programming that we have when it comes to meeting those instructional hours for required by DPI. So we started the year that we had 2 hours of buffer time. So any closures for weather meant that we have to add back any time. So the first couple days, Rick, if you want to go to the next slide. The first couple of closures, we ended up, on November 29th, we ended up having 4K PM canceled in the afternoon. It was a snow event. We didn't do a 2-hour early release K-12, but in the morning we determined that it wasn't safe for buses, so we did a no 4K PM. And then on the 24th, the 14th of December, we had a 2-hour late start. Anytime we have a late start or an early release, there's no 4K for that time, so there was no AM 4K. So that means that now we have PM and AM that both have a time that they need to make up. And then on December 15th, there was no school. So we have 2 days of instruction that we have to make up for our 4K programming. So what I'm proposing, and I've worked with Tim in transportation, I've worked with the 4K teachers themselves on identifying days that worked best within their calendar and their instructional periods to add back. And the days that we are proposing that we turn back on for those 2 days that we have missed that I just shared with you are Friday, March 10th and Friday, April 14th. And then what I'm also hoping we can do so that we don't have to come back and change the calendar again would be that if there would be another cancellation and we didn't do a continuity of learning day or a distance learning day, we would add back starting March 31st, and then the next day added back would be April 28th, and the next day added back would be May 19th. Again, those days were identified in collaboration with the 4K teachers and Tim Runquist for transportation. Our hope would be that if we do have any more cancellations, weather related, that, that continuity of learning plan would continue and distance learning would continue. But in the event that it wasn't able to, we would just turn those days back or on Fridays as well. For continuity of learning for 4K, they have had about 90% participation on those days that we have done the continuity of learning and turned on distance learning for them. So they've had a lot of success with their students participating during those times as well. Any questions?
Pat, any questions here?
No, maybe just quick. Is there a challenge to this age group for distance learning? And I mean, is there any reason why we wouldn't turn that on?
We have turned it on for all of the days that K-12 has, and the feedback that I'm getting from the staff is that they get pictures sent to them frequently throughout the day. They get, like, if they do a lot of like cut a snowflake, so they're working on large mortar and small mortar skill. They're bringing back, they want 1 snowflake and kids will bring back 10 snowflakes, so they're just engaging and they continue with the letter that they're working on that week, the colors, the shapes, the numbers and stuff. So they just push out activities that they would normally do if they were on site and just have the students work either watching a video or doing like writing letters or finding letters in books and stuff like that.
Thank you.
Tanya?
No questions.
Steve?
Nothing.
Becky?
No questions.
Ryan?
No.
So just to be clear, what we're approving here is to turn on March 10th and April 14th as on-site. And then the proposal, if there's more, the 31st, April 20th, and May 19th in that order?
Great.
That's what we're approving, right?
Yes.
Okay, I just want to make sure I'm following. Yep, I'm good. Okay.
Okay.
I'm not. No, I'm slow. Okay. All right. Anybody else? Questions, or we just start with a motion here?
I move to approve makeup days for 4K due to weather-related closures.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? That carries. We're done with business and we're on to info and discussion. And the first is the mid-year athletic director update.
In August, one of the things that we talked about was trying to give periodic updates around programs. And so this is kind of one of the first that we wanted our activities director to come forward and share a little bit of the philosophy that we have with regards to partnerships within the community and beyond, and some of the special events that have been put in place. You'll get other programs from Community Ed and PCR and other programs that you may want to hear from in future meetings. Andrew?
Great. So I'm just going to go over different partnerships that we have, different events that are going on, both recapping what we've done and what's coming up, just so that you know, ask any questions that you have. So really our why comes down to number one for me, student experience. I want to make sure that our students have the best experience they can. That's what it's all about. Create memories, and I know it's really invigorated our coaches to think outside the box and different things that we can do. And then secondary to that, working in different places that I've been, something that's been ingrained in me is that athletics can really serve as a front porch to a district and a community. We showcase our brand. We are bringing people into our community, into our buildings that's the reason they're there. And then once they're there, they learn other things about what's going on. And then also when you're holding different things in our community, we're bringing people from outside, it can cause a positive economic impact that businesses can take advantage of. And that's something I think it's also very important. And those three things are something that I take great pride in with our coaches, to take our responsibility to do great things for what we have here and also for our students. So the first one we touched on a little bit earlier was Women of Will Day. First, I'll just say that this event was completely planned and executed by our committee of student athletes with their coaches, Tracy Budworth and Emily Calabrese. A couple weeks before the event, I went to them and asked them, hey, are we good? I haven't heard anything. And they basically told me to chill out and we're good to go. And so it was a great time. It was celebrated. Girls' participation in athletic programs. It was our largest crowd for a girls' basketball game of the season at 519. And actually behind the boys game against Ellsworth, it's number 2 on the season between boys and girls basketball. And it highlights our current partnership between our department and Under Armour and BSN that sponsor the program. And so the next few slides, we put some pictures in here of the event. And we are planning to do another one around a softball game in the spring. So we're looking forward to that. And we expect to have a very large turnout for that event as well. This year we partnered with the Milwaukee Bucks as part of their prep series to hold a high school basketball game at Pfizer Forum. This is something they've been doing for a really long time. It was Prescott's first opportunity to participate, and it was something that we really had fun with. I know the team and the coaches had a great time with, and we have been invited back to participate. When, we do not know. It will not be next year, as much as everybody would like to, but it is something that we will continue to go back and participate in because it was a lot of fun. And then picture the guys got on the floor before we got going. Over this past weekend, we hosted the Wisconsin versus Minnesota border battle, which is a partnership with Wisconsin Basketball Yearbook. This event had about 900 people come through the door. We had 82 staff, 21 officials, 14 teams, one of the largest events that we've been able to hold here. And it didn't just showcase our district and our programs, it also showcased our community. And from what I was told, there were some businesses in town that had a lot going on that day, which is great. That's what we wanted to do. And it was a tremendous day. Wisconsin won. Prescott got the win. So all in all, a very positive day. I don't know if that opportunity will ever come again, but if it does, we'll be happy to do it. Other notable things that we've done for different programs. Cross country went to the University of Minnesota for the GRIAC. It's one of the largest cross country events in the country for high school. Girls golf went to University Ridge, was home of the Badgers for an event. Girls volleyball went to the Sprawl at UW Stout. Boys basketball did Midwest Classic and Northwest Classic. Boys and girls basketball did a Hastings event, and wrestling participated at Northern Badger at River Falls, which is one of the largest wrestling events in our state. So those are things that we've done recently. Now we have some things coming up that we're excited about that will hopefully do the same thing, same philosophy that we've talked about. So the first one, we're going to host a softball invite on May 6th. We have Hudson, McDonald, and Poinette coming. So there's a good chance all 4 teams are going to be contenders this year. It's going to be a lot of fun. We're expecting large crowds. So we'll make sure to partner with our businesses on that when those teams come to town. I will note that the logos you see here in the middle, Nora French is interning for me, doing a bunch of different branding things, and so she basically took an afternoon and created all these logos, which is something I could never do. And so you'll see that she branded this one to be all the logos branded for Prescott, so we're excited about that. Baseball the weekend after, we're doing another invite. She called it Rumble on the River. I told it to Jeff Ryan, he didn't scowl, so I think we're good to go. And so we're bringing in Ashland, Elk Mound, and St. Croix Falls. So I know Fire Hall will be, a lot of people will be over there on that day, so we're excited about that. Girls volleyball got invited to participate in the Warhawk Open in August at UW Whitewater, which will be a lot of really good volleyball for them and a great opportunity to showcase what we are about. So we'll be coming back later this year. That'll be an overnighter. So they're fundraising currently. So that'll be a great opportunity for them. This actually happened yesterday. Girls basketball got invited to the best holiday event in the state of Wisconsin at UW Parkside next year. So they'll get two really good games against really good teams down there next holiday break. It'll be one of those 2 days. They'll give us back-to-back days because we're going overnight. So I know Coach Hamilton, when I told him about that, he was very excited. And so they're going to start working on fundraising plan for that. The last two items, we are partnering with UW River Falls on different things. I think it's really great for us, being that's our nearest university. We will be, Prescott will partner with the university to host a girls basketball invite on December 9th at Don Page Arena. And what the goal is going forward, starting in 2024, is to get a university women's game as a part of the event, to partner with the high school girls games to celebrate girls basketball in our area, since there really aren't a lot of good events in our area for girls basketball. So we decided to partner with them to start one. So that will happen next year in December. And the final one, which is pretty sweet, starting next fall, Prescott High School will become the new home of UW River Falls Cross Country. They will hold their home events here. So they will have their home event on September 8th, and next year is actually their year to host the WIAC Championship. That will be here on October 28th. That is one of the best attended and well-respected championships the NCAA has in the nation in Division III. There will be a lot of people here that day, so it'll be a great opportunity to showcase our community, and all the WIAC communities will be here from all corners of the state. So they pretty much run it too, so originally it's a burden on us. We just kind of enjoy it because the university provides the staff and everything that's going on around that event. So it's kind of a brief outline of things that are happening, things that we have coming up. There will be more, and so we're happy to keep you apprised as we go along. So happy to answer any questions that you have.
Pat, any questions or comments?
No, comments would be, I appreciate, where there isn't the opportunities that we're seeing, like in women's athletics or girls athletics, that you guys are working to create things. So that's awesome. Nice job.
Going down the line here, similar comments, but also I just overall appreciate your ability to kind of push us to out of our comfort zone, get us some more exposure, bring people into our community. You brought up helping our businesses, and I think that it's just been really fun to see some of these really memorable experiences for our young athletes and character building and all that stuff. So I appreciate it.
Steve?
No comments.
Vicky?
Well, I was at the girls' basketball game, and it was super cool to see all those girls. They were having so much fun when the players came out and did the high five. All the girls ran down front and put their hands out. They were so excited. And then watching them shoot at halftime, everybody was cheering. And what a great way to get girls excited about sports and just letting them know that anybody can do it. So good job.
Ryan?
Yeah, I mean, obviously, I'm in the Women Will program, but yeah, I just really appreciate the recognition and the empowerment for the kids in the community that comes with it. Yeah.
You did a great job.
Yeah. Andrew, you've done an amazing job putting Prescott in a position to be highly visible across a lot of different sports and a lot of different venues. And I'll make one comment here. And the border battle was an amazingly run tournament. I was there pretty much all day, and I had compliments after compliments from people outside of the district that said what a beautiful school you have. The organization on the tournament itself was so well run. And I know we got help from the Border Battle, but you guys were the kind of the muscle behind everything to staff it, and the lunch staff that was there all day. That kudos to them. It was just a really great event. One incident happened, and you guys handled it perfectly. I thought it was the most professional way to handle a tough situation, and kudos to you and Mr. Montreal and Figgy for being the calm heads in the whole place and taking care of it. Fantastic day, and all the other events. The Pfizer Forum was fantastic. The WOW, it's everything. Everything is just a lot of good news here. So excellent job, and thank you for spearheading everything here. So nice job.
You bet. Okay, thank you.
Yeah, wonderful. All right, we're going to move on to item B, middle school, high school discussion on the continuity of learning plan.
And Mr. Kozmowski is going to come up. This is kind of a parallel. It's information discussion with regards to, we just recaptured 2 days for 4K. Primarily because of the developmental age and some kind of still tweaking, to your point, Pat, about how distance learning works at that age. We do have a continuity of learning program, and so I'm going to have Michael walk you through what that board practice and adopted program is and what the options are if we don't use it.
Yeah, I've gotten a lot of questions about this recently just because of our local weather and then sort of what districts are doing and to make up for the lost learning time and things like that. So I thought this was a good opportunity to talk to the board about our continuity of learning. You guys approved it back in September 2021, but I wanted to walk us sort of through how we got here and then sort of what are some of our guiding principles and just talk about how we're going to continue to use it in the future. So one of the things that a lot of people are asking is, this isn't just put together overnight. Why can Prescott do this, but River Falls, Hudson, these other districts are not taking advantage of this? And part of it was that this started actually back in 2019, pre-pandemic. I was at a conference down in the Dells, Slate, and there was a presentation sponsored by DPI from Random Lake and Neenah school districts, and they were looking at capturing time back on snow days at that point. And they actually had started that journey back in like 2011 and 2012. And so we started our planning in Prescott of what could this potentially look like, and how much time can a student be doing work? Is it asynchronous or synchronous? At that time, we did not have one-to-one devices at the high school or the middle school. And then the pandemic hit that next spring. So the good thing about the pandemic is it made schools innovate. It made us learn about the capabilities of our students and the supports that we have and those that we have to provide to students as well. During that school year, we did use a distance learning day option for an inclement weather day. So we had one true snow day and then one distance learning, and that was at the elementary level, because at that time, both the high school and the middle school were distance learning already. That is the year that you approved and added the one-to-one Chromebooks at the high school. 2021, through consultation with DPI about our plan and some recommendations that they had in terms of time. And one of the things about a continuity of learning plan is that the DPI does not approve them. They don't disapprove of them either. They just give us guidance. Some of that guidance is the number of hours that they believe instruction should occur. Activities, things like that. The other part is the counting of minutes. It's not a minute for minute, and it's not intended to be a minute for minute. What it's really trying to do is, again, that continuity where we're building in routines for students to have on a day off of school, which then leads to better learning when they return to school. So the board,
Michael, I would want to interject. Just one is to hit pause and see if the board had any questions about that, about the guidelines, but also just to reiterate, because I know that sometimes parents have reached out with regards to, does it have to be minute for minute? And that we have structured it specifically not to be minute for minute. And we're not looking for students to be on their device for 8 hours. They're not on their device, hopefully. Ryan, you can tell me if that's true, at the secondary level when we're working in school. But do you want questions of the board about just kind of this model and this journey of how we got here?
Anyone have any questions?
Okay. So then, during COVID, there were a number of times where we sent individual classrooms home. And so we've gotten to practice it a little bit. We've gotten to get some feedback from both our staff, from our students as well, and then sort of that participation rate as well. This year, again, due to the weather, we've had 2 true snow days. We've had a late start, we've had an early release day, and we've now had 4 distance learning days. And I think words matter. And sometimes, depending on the different news program that Dr. Spaguzza has to call in, some of them allow you to say distance learning. Some of them, there's not enough space. So you'll see schools say e-learning or virtual learning. But then that sort of confuses and corroborates, sort of commingles of what we're trying to actually accomplish. At the elementary level, it is not virtual. And it's intended not to be virtual because we know that that isn't the best model. We know the best model is students in school with teachers. But when that is not able to happen, we believe this is the next best model of making sure that we're not creating these mini gaps, making sure that we're giving families and students routine, and we're continuing that work from the previous day. So these aren't pre-made up activities that are just waiting on a shelf. These really do lead into the learning of the next day as well. And we notice students come back to school and we get back to learning so much quicker versus that euphoric snow day that we all love, those snow days. But it's getting us back to learning faster now versus strategies that others use of adding days onto a calendar or taking certain days that were marked as off days and turning them back on. So we really believe that this is our best model. Again, we're looking at developmentally appropriate. So like DPI gave us the guidance, we really should not have elementary age kids. They said anywhere from an hour to an hour and a half would kind of be the recommendation of the maximum. And that would be like a 5th grader of being online is what they would recommend. At the secondary level, they felt more comfortable at that 4 to 5 hours of being online. But again, it's not a full day and we know that. But again, it gives some control to families. The way that we model, that we have this structured is that we know learning can happen anywhere. We're giving families an opportunity to take some control of that. If families choose not to participate in the distance learning day, we have plans in place at every building of how we're still exposing them to that learning, and we're still making that learning meaningful and accountable, but we're also trying to make it attainable for when they are not in front of us. Again, just some general requirements as with PLC leaders of what are we looking for our teachers. Again, those clear, attainable learning expectations. We're looking at new instruction, relearning, and enrichment, depending on where we are. Again, because it's based on where we are. We have one-to-one devices at the secondary level, so it's very important. I know I get the emails from Mr. Igo saying make sure your kid has their device and their charger, otherwise come back and pick it up. And again, the equipment that staff need as well, so that's another area that we poll our staff is, do they have reliable technology? We always have the schools available if a staff member so chooses to come in on those days. And we do have some staff that live in town, some with the last name starting with an M, that choose to rather be at home, or excuse me, at school doing their live learning and lessons and making their lesson plans versus being at home when that works out. And again, big part of it is we need to have contingencies where students are not penalized if they did not participate for whatever reason. The family chose to take a snow day or go skiing at Afton Alps, or if they have connectivity problems. That happens, and we have contingency plans in place both for students but then also for staff if that were to happen as well. One of the things is we look at is how well is this working for our families and for our students. And here was just our snapshot of our attendance on January 19th. And a lot of the way that we take attendance is based on not necessarily always just attending the live lesson. That's very important, especially at the secondary level. We do have that at the intermediate as well, but it's also about engaging in that work. So we do have packet work that goes home at the elementary level that accompanied with videos that they can watch. Sometimes it's a recording of our own staff providing the instructions. Sometimes it's an instructional video that they found, and then they return that work. So for the 4K through 3, they return those packets the next day. So these are the kids that participated on January 19th. And you can, And so that's 4K through 12. And as you can see, a great preponderance of our students and families are participating. And again, filling that need of that routine and getting us back to learning when we are back the next day. Again, some of this you saw from Sarah's presentation of the days that we've taken off, and those days that we've taken as true snow days off, and then our distance learning days. And over to the right, I just have the timetable of sort of the instructional time that we've lost, and then where are we in relationship to the state requirement. And as you can see, the high school secondary level 612 is 2 hours short. And at the 4K level, you saw it was 4.5 hours short, which is 1.4 days. You just approved the 2 days being turned back on for those. Those could have been and followed our continuity of learning plan and sort of treated like a distance learning. But with the buses already rolling and those services already available, it made more sense to turn 2 days back on for 4K, who are our neediest learners as well and really need that support, which we know is difficult for families, especially if they're still trying to fulfill their work duties while they have especially the little kids at home. So the last thing we had is just, again, the high school, we have this and middle school, we have these 2 hours. We plan on using our continuity of learning plan and the flexibility we have within that plan to gain those 2 hours back sometime this spring. Again, we're not over with snow season. We know March is the snowiest month of the year. Again, if some more other late starts or even distance learning days, the only thing that will impact our time is not distance learning days, because those do count as the full day of school, even though they're not a minute-to-minute replacement. It would just be late starts and early releases. If that happens, then we'll have more of this time. So at this time, the administration, we're planning on just continuing to use our continuity of learning and a distance learning model to recapture those 2 hours. Versus turning back or looking at days. And I just wanted to bring to the board's attention, if the board wants us to look at turning back on days later, again, that's something that the board would have to take action on. And then there's going to be a lot of implications that fall with that, different services, busing, all those different things that will then come into play. But just looking for guidance on the board if that is something you want me to come back with and working with the administrative team on a recommendation, or if we believe what we're doing in a continuity of learning is the flexibility we should use within that to recapture that time.
Pat, any thoughts on that? Or anybody I just open it up to?
Yeah,
I don't mean to put you on the
Michael,
spot.
maybe help me understand. We're currently down 2 hours.
Correct. Yep.
How do we make that up? I mean, so we have the continuity of learning plan, but
Yep, and the continuity of learning plan, it doesn't, so there's a difference between synchronous and asynchronous work.
Yep.
So synchronous is when it's a live lesson, the teacher's online with you, and asynchronous is more of those activities where it's an activity you can do on your own or with some guidance, and that could be, again, a recorded video of our staff. It could be a TED Talk that we find or something like that.
Okay.
So the buildings would look at what would fit their model the best, and then they would communicate that out with their families and with their students, obviously, of this is how we're recapturing this time. You know, it might be an enrichment activity, it might be a relearning activity, depending on the course and grade level.
Is it kind of like homework?
It could potentially be on a regular school day, or we give them an activity to do over the next week.
Sure.
You know, that may be enrichment of what we're doing currently in the classroom.
And Michael, I think it'd be okay just to even share the discussions that we've had of days where we might have students, again, we would share that a specific day, for example, like one of the professional development days, where teachers are in the district, there's no staff, students might be doing some event or taking a family trip. They wouldn't be held to that, but there might be opportunities that we would say, if you have time, this is where you could fulfill these 2 hours.
Right, we might potentially look at a PD day, because then our staff could also be available to families that need extra assistance as well. But yes, it could be just an activity that's after school sometime as well. You know, the hours of the day or the day doesn't really matter in DPI's eyes. It's more about that minute count. So
I may be jumping ahead here. Assuming that we don't have any other disruptions, we make it up in your. make it up in the plan, all right?
Yeah.
If I'm understanding right, the days that are gonna give us the most trouble would be early release or late starts.
Late starts, yep.
Because we can't do distance learning. If we have just a straight up weather day,
Mhm.
we have the ability to do a distance learning, we're fine, nothing to make up. Okay.
A late start, we may be able to capture that time back on that day if after school is over, we use our continuity of learning for the 2 hours of activities that make up for the 2 hours we came in late that morning, right? So we could potentially put plans in place for that. That'd be a hard pivot on that particular day. So I don't know that that would be our first option. I think the better option would be to look at some sort of upcoming day of professional development or a special event that we would create around that time to capture it back.
So and maybe similar to what Sarah looked at, what other levers do we have to pull should we get some unfortunate events? And I'm sure you guys have already thought about it.
Yep, and really your levers are extend the school year, which then would push teachers into the following week and give a short week just before summer school. That's one option. The other option is to look at days that currently are off that we could turn back on. So President's Day currently is an off day in February. Again, this would require board action. You can't do it tonight, so that one would be a tough one. The only other real day that is off is otherwise would be Good Friday. That'd be another option to look at. I know we have some professional development days coming up. The difficulty about professional development days is those really are days where our teachers are learning together throughout the day. So I would advocate not to use one of those. But again, it's the board's discretion on where you would want to put that.
And then I think my last question, and not that you would, but maybe something we can get back on, how many early release or late starts can happen before we have to pull one of those levers?
If we continue to use the flexibility we have in our continuity of learning plan, we can just use that. We wouldn't necessarily have to turn on another day. It's just an option that we have.
Okay.
Currently, I'm saying we would like to just stay with the flexibility we have in that continuity of learning plan versus turning on a day.
Okay, but so what, if you're saying, I'm hearing there's not a threshold that if we have, hey, 4 more early release days, that's going to be too much to overcome with the continuity of learning plans.
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
Well said. I think that answered it.
No, those were really well-framed questions. Thank you. And obviously, I won't say never, but I think what we're proposing is that you have a good plan. We do have the opportunity to do distance learning. It is for 6-12. Right now, we're at 2 hours. We would like to sustain that. If for some reason that wasn't the model you wanted, then the only other way would be turning on February 20th, April 7th, or end of year. And those have a lot of logistical, and also families might have planned something, so we're never going to be 100% engaging for all.
Tanya, any other questions?
So I really like the continuity plan. I like kind of how it's mapped out. I love to see that participation. It's great. It looks like some of those grades are really across the district are using that time. I am great with continuing with that plan. And when we see something like 2 hours, 4 hours, I think it's really doable. I just want to be really purposeful in that time. I don't want it to be like, if you want to, come on in for this. Like it's, we're learning, right? And really like the letter of the law is that we're providing these opportunities for kids to learn. It's not like if you feel like it. So I just want to make sure that it's purposeful and it still adds value to what they're doing in school. And I'm sure you guys will do great with that. I actually may be different from Pat and others, but if we get closer to 8 hours behind, something like that, I would almost rather see a day turn back on than all these little pockets of do this and you have this opportunity or that. Because I also think that's a lot to manage too when we're just kind of making these things up. So, I mean, I hope we don't get there, and and maybe it's a little bit of both. I don't really know. Right. And then if we were looking at that, you brought up a couple of dates, but the 4K dates were different than that, and I don't know if it's because of
4K programming is not on Fridays. Where all the other, so we're already at school on those days.
Okay.
Yeah, so that would not.
Yeah, so they wouldn't work. So however that looks, I hope we don't get there. But I do think that there's a threshold that we have to turn something back on rather than hodgepodging hours together.
That's where I kind of was at is, should we at least be prepared and look at, say, Good Friday? Yep, people might have plans already, but if this is on their mind as something that if we get more days and we can't control the weather, and if things keep happening and we keep losing hours and we're finding it really difficult to make up that time, and maybe it is good to have a plan and have that at least in the forefront of everything, so that parents can keep that in mind, teachers can keep that in mind, and if we have to pull the trigger, then we can do it.
Sure.
I guess I don't want to short and we aren't going to have the time then at the end of the year with the shifting of everything, and then we're looking at packing up both schools. So I don't want to put that.
Yep, and the only thing I would say is, like, if we were to turn on Good Friday, there's two different ways to turn it on. Are you turning it on as a true school day where the bus wheels are turning, or are you turning it on as a continuity of learning distance day?
Yeah, and I think for options, I think.
And that would be
That'd
fine
be the
for
option.
me because it's purposeful, it's planned, so I can see where that's an option. It's just make up this hour and here's some options. And honestly, it sounds like adding extra homework on to, watch this video. That's homework at times. You know what I mean? It's not new learning, which is homework, reinforcing old learning, which I just don't want to just pile that on and count it as hours. So I think, if we could do it distance learning wise, quote unquote, however that looks, but I just feel like at some point it might be a plan, and it's extraordinary times. We're barely through midwinter.
Yeah.
And we've already, I don't remember, and I looked, back, I don't think we've ever had this many snow days. And so it's not a far stretch to say we might be at a doubling place. And it might be best to turn on a day. And like Vicki said, maybe we stress that ahead of time what that day might look like so parents can plan. You could do that from afar on your trip or whatever, but.
Well, and let me just clarify then. Are you open for us to take that feedback and start to designate, for example, that the 2 hours, or if there are more hours, we would be designating days like April 7th?
Sure.
However, because we do distance learning, that's how it would be done. And therefore, because if it's a physical turn on, then I do have to work on food service and
transportation.
So that's a different mechanism and a different financial burden. And I think that if it gets to a tipping point, and I would just share with all of you, there is a threshold for me where I would start to get concerned, where I would say, hey, I think we do have to be on site. But I think the administrative team and the teacher leaders, I think, have come forward with an opportunity for us, 612, to meet those 2 hours, and if there are an early or late release, 1 or more 2 times, I think we're okay. I think physically we would have to come in if we're only halfway through it. Like if we had another X number of events, I don't think we could sustain it just through distance.
Correct.
Steve, anything? Vicki?
That's it.
Ryan?
I don't think so.
All right. Anything else, guys? Okay. Yeah, I think this looks good. Thanks. Thanks, Michael.
Okay. Michael, thank you to the principals, thank you, and to the teachers, thank you for what they've been doing under very extraordinary times. It is not an easy pivot.
All right, we'll move on. Item C, update on referendum projects. A quick one.
I have pulled together 32 slides for Mike.
Specifically for Mike.
For Mike. No, really good news. January 5th. Mike Hoyka and I did meet with the whole team. We were able to go over what Market & Johnson believes are the cost estimates based on current dollars. Remember, this plan was executed in 2019. And so now we're jumping into 23 and 24 costs. And you know that there has been escalation and inflation. The good news is that they believe that we are still going to be able to accomplish a majority of our high priority and definite priority topics or areas from the Facility Advisory Committee. Across the top, you see the different months. We are now looking at bid package 2, and that'll be the final set of bid packages. Would be going out, where did I miss it? In February. And we look for the confirmation date of getting those back within March, and you'll be able to participate. Mike Hoyka and I will be there as well. And that's when you'll have 3 things answered. Whether or not the estimates come in alignment, whether or not the vendor can do it in the timeline, either summer of 23 or 24, and whether or not it matches our timelines. I have been very impressed with what they've been able to do, along with what the board approved last month with the building flip. The engineers have been on site. Our 2 principals, Kyle Igo and Michael Kozmowski, and the teachers during the last professional development day walked through the 3 science rooms and the future STEM room. The final plans are going to be delivered to us on Friday, and the engineers have confirmed that the natural gas, the water, the eye wash stations, and the cabinetry will be in place for August of 2023. So I think in the overall picture, we're on target. And Mike Hoyka also got boxes, labels, and tape, and we're starting to pack up for things that have already been completed within the schools. We do have a date. We're negotiating to see if we can get the date moved up. So they put us on the calendar in June. We are looking at, I think it was June 5th? Okay, June 5th. Thanks, Michael. When the trucks will be on site and they'll start moving. And then demolition and the rest of the work will occur.
Any questions from the board here?
I know this is supposed to be quick, Mike. When is the last day of teachers are on our campuses? The 3rd, is that why you're looking to move it up so they can, with the moving, or?
Well, 2 things. We're going to have the teachers will be all packed up, but the moving company was going to come late June.
Okay.
And we're trying to get the whole building, empty.
Mm-hmm.
So that they can start. Yeah.
Right. Okay. That's all, Mike.
Pat? Anything? No. Anything over here? Questions, comments? Okay. Awesome. All right, we're going to move on. Item D, school board seat and election update.
So just at kind of reminding everybody that there is an election for 1 seat. Steve Sizemore had notified the community and the board that he is not running for re-election. The candidates have submitted, and the election is in April for a 3-year term.
Anything on that one? We're good? All right. Let's move on. Item E, school board convention update from the superintendent.
Yeah. Well, I actually have 3 of you that were able to participate in that convention. One, Mike and I were able to participate in a pre-workshop 4-hour exchange on board governance. I thought from my perspective, and Mike can speak, it was good to be in a room for that amount of time to see the challenges that we have faced as a board to be normalized in a way, to commiserate a little bit, but also to see how strategic and intentional ways of running meetings, dividing roles and responsibilities can be very helpful and productive, not only just in this room, but as we talk about with teamworks from the boardroom to the classroom. And so with that, I would just say I was there all the way through Friday, saw the governor's early presentation of the state of the state, which was delivered last night at 7 o'clock, and know that his budget will be coming forward to the community or to the legislature in February, and know that CISA 11 superintendents have also released information about financing in all of our local newspapers. But Pat, Tanya, Mike, any takeaways for you?
I was there just one day, sat into some facility planning stuff, some state financing and understanding. I think the good news is Rick, I think you've done a nice job in some of the financial and how schools get financed, and Baird's participation with us is what I saw in the seminars, in the workshops. So it's nice to corroborate all of that. Facility planning, I think, we're doing a good job. Market's doing a good job. Our architects are doing a good job.
And we got to see them there.
We're following best practices. So again, nice to see. And then, the keynote speaker, was nice. That was a good one to kind of start Wednesday off.
I went to one on crisis management for districts and communities, some behavior things that are happening within districts related to finances and behavior of students and how that impacts finances, and then some board relations. But really, ultimately, my challenge for our district here is that we present something next year. And I think we have a ton of things that we could really celebrate and present. And I was looking at all of the different, just us have been there, right? So it's not like the community knows what it looks like, but there's probably 100 different offerings, would you say, close to every single day that you could take and choose from. And so many of the things I thought, wow, we do something really unique and special and kind of inventive in Prescott and stuff. It'd be really neat to be able to get our name out there and share some of that kind of stuff. So I think Michael Kosmowski's a good candidate for thinking about that and putting a group together.
Agreed.
Yeah, I'll just echo Rick, the seminar that we went to with the board relations and the superintendent, that being able to talk to fellow school board members and realize that, hey, actually Prescott's doing pretty well, compared to some other districts and some of the challenges that they deal with their local school boards. It really puts an emphasis on good school board collaboration and the work that we do as a board, and being able to collaborate, even though we differ in opinions very often, which is a good, healthy thing, but just being able to effectively collaborate and move forward as a team. That was great. And there's some things that I'd like to kind of re-emphasize on an annual basis, maybe bake into some onboarding new school board members, and just kind of talk about governance versus managerial and knowing our role, and it re-emphasized a lot of the things that we have been working really hard to normalize here. So, and then I spent about 5 hours in a school board, the WASB delegate assembly that you.
Always fun.
That was fun. So, yeah, that's my update. That's it. We'll move on. Recognition of visitors. If there's anybody left in the audience that would care to be recognized. Sure. All right. We will entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
That was quick. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, and we are adjourned at 8:40. Thank you.